going to present a paper that is very much a work in progress. Let's see. So I'm really sort of scraping the surface with this presentation. So I welcome any feedback that you might have, whether it's references or questions or comments on this work. And the title of my paper is Photography in the First International Polar Year, or IPY1. And the research for this paper, sorry, Anna, you said before that my sound was a bit bad, so I'm just going to check that you can all hear me. Yeah. And the research for this project is a continuation of the work I did on this book, Starman, which came out in 2018. And here I wrote about the Northern Lights researcher Sofus Tromsø, who was a researcher at the First International Polar Year, and who became much more well known for the photographs he took than the actual research that he did. And I was very interested in the way that his photographs came to surpass his scientific research. And so I was keen to investigate further the use of photography in the IPYs to date. So, combining qualitative empirical investigation with in-depth analysis of IPY publications, this paper seeks to situate photography and its roles in the center and periphery of 19th century natural sciences research endeavors. And this will eventually be placed in sort of a larger context, where I focus on the dichotomies research and result, research and communication, and research and marketing. But today I will focus on the use of images in official IPY reports. And my goal is to draw a link between hard science production and consummation at the time that can be seen as the start of modern science, and today, when the natural sciences is saturated with imagery. And choosing the 1882 IPY as the starting point for this investigation means focusing on research carried out in and about geographical areas of significant political, economic, and not least symbolic importance. And additionally, for the researchers at the time, the locations that they went to provided very specific challenges in terms of access, terrain, and climatic conditions, not just from conducting research, but also creating photographs. Oh, what happened there? That was a very speedy presentation. These challenges that the researchers had are all the more important to bear in mind, as towards the end of the 19th century, photography still entailed transporting heavy and cumbersome equipment, and one was dependent on having some control over lighting and temperature conditions in order to obtain the best possible images. And so, for example, these images I'm showing here were taken in September of 1882, just before the polar night set in, which would have made it very difficult to take photographs. And August 1st, 1882 marked the official start of the first International Polar Year. So over the course of a full calendar year, researchers working in the natural sciences would conduct observations from 14 officials and a smaller number of auxiliary stations positioned across the Arctic and Antarctic. And it was the organizers' hope that the information they gained from collecting and comparing meticulously synchronized observations in the fields of meteorology and geophysics would further polar research in a way never seen before, through the focused effort and international collaboration that this event entailed. And in particular, they would focus on meteorology and weather forecasting, fields that had enormous importance for international trade and economy, as they do today. The IP1 took place at a time in history when photographic printing technologies were developing rapidly, when many of the natural science disciplines and their methodologies were still being established, and when the borders between disciplines were flexible. The various expedition teams included men with varied backgrounds and experiences, such as officers, seamen, and researchers, which meant that their previous experiences in conducting measurements and research varied wildly. This is reflected in the records and result from the various IP1 expeditions. Some of the official expedition reports emphasize scientific data, which is presented as tables, like rows and rows of numbers, while others are lavishly illustrated, some including images based on photographs, which is our focus today. And these published reports constitute some of the most important source material for this paper, as this is where the photographic material can most comprehensively be found. Whereas I've already been able to access most of these reports, I will also, when access to archives becomes more normalized, look at correspondence and other writings concerning the IP1 itself, such as directives from the organizers, and I will do that in order to establish sort of what sort of official stance there was on photography. And this is a main topic for my project, and one that I've unfortunately not been able to investigate very far. So while I've been able to gain an overview of the photographs resulting from the IP1, I still aim to find out what sort of came before the expeditions took place. So I want to look at whether it was a goal for the IPY to use photography in its research, or was the use of this relatively new medium optional? Was photography even mentioned in official directives, either for the IPY1 as a whole or for specific expeditions? And how did these directives, if stated, play out during the actual expeditions? So I want to quote one report, which is indicative of what I've found so far. And this is from the directives for one of the American expeditions, America had 2. And it says, quote, "Accurate representations, either by the photographic process or sketching, will be made of all phenomena of an unusual character or of whatever is characteristic of the country." And this is actually order number 9 in a list of 52 orders and instructions. So photography came quite high up on the list of what the expeditions were supposed to do. As with later IPYs, the first international polar year resulted in a large number of publications, ranging from official reports and data sets to rescue mission reports and travelogues of a more personal character. While the first narrative reports were published as early as 1881, it's more difficult to say where to draw the line. When was the last publication done? Because it's, to some extent, research continues to be published even today, and certainly in disciplines that weren't even thought of as belonging to the IPY1, such as Arctic social history, visual anthropology, indigenous studies, climate change studies, and so on. And 2 distinct initiatives were helpful in determining the relevant source material for this paper. And one of them you see here on the screen. It's the International Polar Year Publications Database. And this database was actually created in conjunction with IPY4, which took place in 2007 to 2008. And the administrators of this database thought that the IPY4 alone would generate something like 20,000 articles and publications. But as of May this year, just under 7,000 publications were listed for all 4 IPYs altogether. So it is dependent on researchers and others reporting publications themselves. So that's a bit of a drawback, but this is still the best place to find information about the IPY1 collected in one place. And the second initiative is this page, which is made around a data set. So all those lists of numbers, they've been gathered here for all the expeditions, but they also included a image database, which has been really helpful. So it's like, it's samples of images from the official reports. And though not exhaustive, this image collection provides a fairly representative selection of the types of imagery found across the IPY publications, as far as I've been able to tell. So I'll return now to the first database. So I've relied on the catalogue records here to do a lot of my research. And in many cases, it specifies the number of illustrations in the publications. And 1882 till 1887 are the years where most publications came out of the IPY1. And of these, 62 are illustrated. And breaking these down, we see that at least 14 contained plates, 27 contained illustrations, 37 maps, and so on. And one publication can, of course, contain several different types of illustration. And there's only 3 specific mentions with the word photo, whether photographic or photography in it. 2 of these are illustrations based on expedition photographs, and one is, quote, numerous photo illustrations and pencil sketches of individuals, settlements, landscapes, etc. And this latter is actually the travelogue that I mentioned earlier by Sofus Tromholt. So that's not an official report, but a travelogue, and it's not from an official station, but from one of the auxiliary stations. And that is quite interesting in itself, because the publication is actually, it's got upwards of 100 illustrations. So it's probably one of the ones with most images. And I'm going to finish now pretty quickly. I just want to say a little bit about the types of images that I found. There are portraits, and I presume that these have been taken before the expeditions took place. There are images that show the place of the expeditions. So this one where you can see where they were actually taking the measurements, and these that show dwellings for the expedition members, and expedition ships. There's quite a lot of ship images. There's some more dramatic scenes, so a ship that's gone stuck in the pack ice. And there are some pure landscapes, which you can see to one side here, and images with local indigenous people as well. So it is too early in this project to draw clear conclusions about anything really, definitely about the intent and the actual use of photography. However, I want to return to those orders that I was quoting earlier. And the motive types that I've found seem to both confirm and not confirm those orders. Because there are landscape images that can be said to be typical of the area which was asked for, but there are no photographs of the exceptional. And while there are many images of typical wildlife and plants and so on, those are not photographs, but drawings mainly. And there seem to be taken more images of matters related closer to the expeditions themselves. So campsites, research stations, and images that seek to emphasize the dramatic and the exceptional of the expedition life. Thank you very much.